You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte, and you are in for a treat with this conversation. We're shifting energy completely right now. And honestly, I think we need it after that first hour and some change. Joining us is CC Wright, author of The Root of Awareness Tools to Ground and Grow Vocal and Physical Communication. This book is really about something that we don't talk about enough on this show or in our community, for that matter, is how the way we speak, how the way we stand, how the way we carry ourselves, how it's connected to what we have survived. Cece, welcome to A More Perfect Union.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here.
Thank you so much for being here. Some people may not know this, but a couple years back, I had vocal surgery. I had some polyps on my vocal cords,
Okay.
and I experienced uh, really hoarse sounding voice that would sort of
Yeah.
get worse as the day dragged on. For some of our leaders, learners, listeners that were riding with us a few years ago, probably heard it on the air. And
Hmm.
and I learned so much about vocal health and how that's connected to so many other things during that season in my life. That process of healing. And so maybe that's part of the reason why I was so drawn to your Instagram post. But talk to us about the root of awareness. For some who've never encountered this framework before, what does it actually mean for trauma to live in the way we speak or move?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I'm so curious before I get into it. What was the video that pulled you in? Do you remember what it was?
It was a video promoting your book. It was on
Okay.
on
Okay.
on on Instagram, and I think you did like a direct to camera something,
Okay.
and it caught my attention. I don't know how I got my algorithm, but it did.
Okay. I was curious. So to answer your question, I actually have a copy of the book right here. So the root of awareness, it is the connection between our voices, our bodies, our communication pathways. So everything that we use to communicate with one another. Trauma is the impact that is had on our bodies, our voices, and the way that we communicate. So if we look at things like some sort of now accepted ideas like the body keeps the score. If you
Mhm.
go through something, you carry it with you. Unless you do the work to drop it off, to release it, to expel it, you are carrying it with you. And so this practice goes beyond just what we carry in our bodies, but also how our body is connected to the sound of our voice. The body is the instrument, the
Mhm.
voice is the music. So if your instrument is all banged up, it's going to
Mm.
show up in how your instrument sounds when you go to play your part of the musical symphony that is life. So that's the nuts and bolts of it.
I want to build off of that example there, because you connect physical gestures and habits to
Hmm.
specific past traumas. And so, can you give us a concrete example of a gesture or a vocal habit that most people would never think twice about, and
Mm,
what it might actually be protecting?
sure. Let's talk about the simplest of all, suppressing,
Hmm.
particularly suppressing speech or suppressing emotion. When we feel something and we have a response, our body will go to make that response. And a suppression would look like pulling the lips into the mouth or
Mm.
biting the lower lip, right? So we have a suppression that is pretty basic, pulling the lips in, holding the mouth closed with force. And then biting the lip is a violent suppression. It is causing pain to oneself in order to stop the self from speaking or expressing. And we'll do this in order to not cry. We'll bite our lip, or we'll bite the inside of our cheek, or we'll gulp down. We will push emotion back into the body. So we are used to seeing people suppress emotions and suppress sound all the time, not knowing that those simple gestures are connected to a larger pattern or habit that we have around stopping our own expression.
And speaking of expression, talk to us about vocal placement specifically. Why does how we say something in terms of pitch and tension, where the
Mm,
sound comes from in our body? Talk to us about why um, that matters as much as what we say.
sure. So, to make it really simple, if we think about singers and they talk about their head voice, the head
Mm,
voice is up high, the chest voice is our lower voice where we're using more broad sound, right? And the head voice is up here, right? So when we look at pretty much everything in our world, grounded at the bottom, low frequency, right? High frequency at the top. And this is why we've got those grounding mats and, we have different frequencies that move through, but the higher the frequency goes, the more you can kind of feel it resonating in your own skull, right? You get that sound when you get that high pitched sound, it feels like it's driving right into your skull, right? You'll have that in horror movies versus the opposite. In a horror movie, you hear that low drone and you feel it in your body, right? You can sometimes the bass drum will make your heart beat. Sometimes a low drone will make you have sort of a stomach achy feeling. Low
mhm,
sounds go low in the body, high sounds go high in the body. So when we're looking at the voice, there's all these components to the voice. We have root sound. These are the sounds we make when we're first born that nobody has to teach us. Crying, laughing. We just come with these sounds. They're not language based. But then we move into pitch and how we use pitch and where do we use pitch in order to communicate our thoughts. That's happening with the lungs and with the depression of air so that we can move the vocal cords into different frequencies of sound. Now, if somebody doesn't use pitch at all and they have a monotone sound and the voice is kind of
mhm,
just plodding along, we would, knowing this system that is in the root of awareness, understand that that is a either repressed or suppressed or imbalance in the heart because the lungs are part of the heart and you're not using pitch. So you're not modulating your voice. You're not helping people understand your meaning of your words by using pitch to make it
mhm,
easier. Now, we do this naturally. We do it with puppies. We do it with babies. We use a lot of pitch when we talk to a baby because we know they don't understand what we're saying, right? So we bounce up and down so that they can feel our words rather than
mhm,
understand them. We're always doing both as communicators, allowing people to feel us in their body using low sounds, to hear us in their mind using higher pitch sounds. So this, you'll love this. Fox News, they're going to yell, they're going to use guttural sounds, they're going to activate your fear center, low vibrational energies. MS Now or whatever they're calling themselves now, they're going to use that sort of, what we think of as being like the egghead voice, high pitched, nasalized sound. You're going to talk really, really fast because we want to get you to think about things differently. We want to get you to think. We don't want to get you to act. Now, Fox News, we're going to yell and scream and come down here. You listen to Alex Jones, deep, guttural, fear activating, low vibrational, okay, versus somebody like Rachel Maddow, high intellect, nasalized sound, talks a little bit faster, wants to get you to think. So we're doing this all the time. We're just not really understanding the mechanism behind it all. And so I wanted to break that down for people so that if you want to improve, you can read about how to improve. You can learn to listen to yourself. You can learn to hear the difference. You can improve your authentic voice and use that voice to affect people through your authenticity rather than through the mask that we all learn through time.
and that's what I love so much about your book, The Root of Awareness. I really think it's a toolbox. It's a toolbox for people to you know figure out how to better use their own instrument. We all have one. We all have a voice, but we're not always sort of dialed in to how we can use it more effectively. I want to talk about communication as inheritance because
Mm,
a lot of us were raised with very specific, sometimes harsh rules about how to speak.
mhm.
Watch your tone, watch your mouth, don't
Yeah,
talk back,
yeah, yep.
be twice as good. How do those inherited communication habits, how do they show up later as blocks based on your work?
Mm. Yes. Okay, well, it's important to think about who gets suppressed more often, and we see that in our world. Women are more likely to be told to sound like a lady, right? Talk like a lady. A lady wouldn't do that. Sit like a lady, right? All of those things as you get older are going to have an impact on how you sound. For men, it's going to be speak up, speak clear, talk louder. Nobody can hear you. So we usually experience opposite issues for males and females in my work. Oftentimes, men will tend to push on their voices, holding tension in the body, overbreathe, puff out the chest. And that actually can cause just as much damage as suppressing the voice all the time, to the point that you end up with throat issues, rage based disease. Like suppression of rage is one of the number one drivers for autoimmune disease. So those are the ways in which I see those conditions, and the conditioning that we do to young people shows up later as, throat stuff or
Yeah.
body stuff.
Yeah. When we come forward, I want to ask you uh, some to make some distinctions by gender, if there are any differences between how trauma shows up in men's communication versus women's, and for Black men specifically,
Mhm.
who are often taught to armor up, to stay guarded, to keep it short. I'm wondering, what does your work say about the cost of that armor on the actual voice and body over time? You're listening to and
Mhm.
streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with the author of The Root of Awareness, C.C. Rice, when we come forward. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte, and she's C.C. Rice, the author of The Root of Awareness. Uh, Run, don't walk. Run, don't walk to go get this book. If you're looking for ways to exercise your voice, um, to really invest in using your voice to its full potential, authentically, honestly. This book is definitely something that you want to pick up. I saw an Instagram post of CC Rice about the book not that long ago, and knew right away that I wanted to be in conversation with her and each and every one of you. And so here we are. CC, before the book, I'm sorry, before the break, rather, we were uh, talking about just sort of the importance of sort of getting grounded, and
Mhm.
that made me, sort of think about some of the gender differences when it comes to trauma, how trauma shows up, particularly in men's communication versus
Mhm.
women's communication. And so, what differences have you seen in your work, and any special notes, particularly related to Black men, that you want to lift up?
Mhm. I mean, there's so much, right? It's a big topic. I think what's important about trauma and the voice in particular as it relates to Black people in general, and then I'll talk a little bit about gender dynamics. But historically, what we understand about Black communication in mixed spaces, right, is that what you say, if said the wrong way, quote unquote, can lead to violence on your body, right? That has historically been one of the ways in which the Black body has been policed. Through, if you say the wrong thing, if you speak to a person the wrong way, if you talk to someone you're not supposed to talk to, if you speak before you're spoken to, et cetera, et cetera. And so, what this led to ultimately was code switching, right? Having to enter into a space and change the way that you speak in order to not seem aggressive in any way, in order to seem as though I know the rules of this space and I'm going to follow them for my own safety and, in order to get by, right? In order to progress in my life and not have this step in my life impede me. Now, because of that, there code switching is a trauma response in and of itself, right? It is a direct relationship to the fear and the knowledge contained in what can happen if you don't sound the right way, if you don't
Mhm.
have the right pitch pattern, if you don't have the right volume choice at a particular moment. And that, I think, universally for Black Americans is a space of extreme, extreme tension. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. When it comes to men, what I notice most when I'm working with Black male clients in particular, where they have less facility is making sound that is just emotional, that is not
Mhm.
language centered. You are allowed to describe how you feel if you can do that, if there is space and time for that, which is still rare, but you're not allowed to just boo hoo. And that is
Mhm.
a problem because the boo hooing, the sound making part, that's crying.
Mhm.
Everything else is weeping. And weeping is a suppressive act. Weeping is a learned activity. This is why babies don't weep. You know something's wrong if you see a baby just having tears and not making a sound. Why is that? Because the tears are connected to an expression, a release, a cry for help, a signal to the outside world that I need something physically to change. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm stressed, I'm uncomfortable, I'm asleep, right? All those things. But when Black men in particular are not allowed that space to wail and to cry and to release that sound, where is that connection to rooted sound going? It's being suppressed and it's turning into tension in the body, in and around the emotional center, which is the belly, where where women hold the womb. That is still the same place where men hold emotions in their body. So they tense, they tighten around the belly, they tighten around the pelvis, they suppress the voice, they sometimes push the voice down, and that perpetuates. And it starts a cycle where if you've never heard your dad cry, maybe you've seen him cry, but have you heard him cry? Then
Mm.
it's no longer okay for your son to be heard crying. And I see this a lot, particularly with, little Black boys. Don't you cry. Stop that sound. Don't do that. Stop that. And that teaches suppression. And when you don't let it out, you are walking around holding it, period.
Mm.
You have to
Mm.
put it somewhere. Sadness, anger, grief, trauma, if you don't release it, you are holding it
Mm.
in the form of sound.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're holding it, and over time you might even turn into like a powder keg. Um,
Big time.
and I mean, a lot of folks sort of you know shrug their shoulders, and wonder, um, where do some of these acts of violence come from? And,
Hmm.
I certainly don't mean to justify any act of violence, but, we can't pretend that folks' inability to be able to process their own emotions, their own trauma in a healthy way, we can't pretend that that is disconnected from the violence that folks may decide to inflict on themselves or others.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what we see with intimate partner violence across race, is that the person you are closest to is the person who is going to bear the brunt of the violent outburst for all of the things that you have not expressed in a healthy way, for all of the therapy that you have not gotten that you needed. The place where that becomes incredibly dangerous is in your closest partner relationship. And so it behooves all of us to have a space to process trauma. And that doesn't mean doing it silently. I mean, I think that that's why I felt like writing this book was necessary, because I repeatedly saw people seeking out ways to heal that were either talk therapy or some other silent physical act. And the truth is that the true healing of our emotional centers and our vocal placement and how we authentically communicate is the space between. So silent yoga isn't doing nearly as much for you as it would do for you if you made that sound that you need to make when you finally get that full stretch or that full release. Why suppress part of that experience?
Mhm.
It's conditioning. We've been taught not to make sound so that other people don't have to hear or deal with our private emotions. Um, and that's hurting all of us.
Yeah, it is. And I want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of grounding. You talk a lot about grounding in this book. For folks
Mhm,
who are less familiar, what does an actual grounding exercise look like? And,
mhm,
you know, if if someone's voice sounds, tight or thin or forced, what could that be telling them about what's happening internally?
mhm. So a tight voice, right, is usually what we describe when someone has tension around the throat, right? It gives that sound of there's not a lot of resonance, right? So the voice is not reverberating in the way that it should. It's not taking up enough space in the body. Now, that is connected to whether or not the person is grounded. So, what I mean by that, when we're talking about grounding as it relates to communication in the voice, it's a little bit different, but not entirely different from what we mean when we talk about grounding electricity, right? So, we use the earth to ground. It is what helps to lower the charge. If you think about it this way, pain is positively charged. So we want to reduce inflammation, we want to reduce the charge, we want to ground in order to keep the body from developing any kind of dis-ease or disease, right?
Mhm.
So when the voice is tight, that usually means that the body is pulling away from the earth, tensing and tightening the upper parts of the body, relying on internal structure for support and stability instead of relying on the earth for support and stability. So a grounded voice comes through soft feet, slightly bent knees, a relaxed pelvis, connecting to the earth with ease so that you can feel the earth supporting you instead of tensing and tightening your whole body, pulling up and away from the earth because you don't trust the earth to hold you. So a
Mm,
tight voice is naturally going to be a voice that is not grounded because if it was grounded, it would be buoyant, it would be reverberate, and it would access the openness of the lower parts of the body, particularly softening of the belly around the abdomen, the relaxation of the pelvis. And when you have that relaxation all the way down the body, the knees should also be soft and buoyant and ready and available for movement rather than
mhm.
fight, flight, tense, tight, scared, ready to fight or flee.
Cece, for parents that are streaming or listening to us right now, raising, a black or brown kid in particular in this political climate, what's
Mm-hmm.
one thing from your work that they could start teaching that child today about their own voice and body?
Mm. I love to start simple when it comes to kids. I actually taught middle school and high school for about 10 years doing exactly this stuff. And it's more recent that I've been doing this with just regular everyday people. But, I was an acting teacher in the voice and speech department at the Professional Performing Arts School in New York City for 10 years. And my students would do the warm up with me every day when we'd have class. But the part of it that I saw really changing them and rooting them the most was the need to express big sound. So we would do this exercise called Tarzan, that I call Tarzan. It's actually from one of my teachers from grad school. And you just reach up toward the sky. And when you bring your arms down, you bang on your chest and you make a big open ah sound, right? As loud as you can without hurting your voice. You support your breath. You bang on the chest. You tap on the thymus gland, right? Which is where those T cells are made. And for kids, they're still making those T cells to strengthen their immune systems. So you give a little boost to your immune system. It gives you a little emotional boost too. You start to feel a little bit brighter and like you want to do more activity, but you also feel this full release of the sound of your voice, and nobody tells you to be quiet. So you have a space to put that big, buoyant sound of yours, and it is welcome. And once we start doing this, I notice that the kids start out hesitant, quiet, looking around at each other, giggling, feeling a little silly. And by the time we've done it for the first week or two, they get to that part and it is a full release for them because it's the first time all day that they have been encouraged to make big sound. And we need it all day long. Our kids are being hushed and shushed and told that they need to be smaller and behave better and be more in line. And there's a rule for this and there's a rule for that. And sometimes they just need space to express without having to put words to it, without having to make it make sense to someone outside of them. It only needs to make sense to their system. And so, for Black and Brown kids in particular, I think it's important for them to be able to make big sound and to not have that be a threat to their life. And so, I think it's important that we create safe spaces for emotions. Let kids have tantrums, give them a space to do that. Teach them how to throw a tantrum. Teach them how to, punch their pillow and not hurt themselves. Teach them how to jump up and down and get their energy out and yell and scream and run around, the yard, because they need that time in that space. And it needs to be
Mhm.
safe, and it needs to be a protected time, and it needs to be taught to them that they are allowed to express these emotions and that
Mhm.
there are safe spaces where they can do that.
Cece, in our remaining minute with you, what was the personal moment in your own story that led you to write this book in the first place?
I mean, there are a lot of personal moments that led to this, but one in particular was, I was having migraines chronically and TMJ, and I was going to doctors, during my childhood, and nobody knew what was causing these things or what to do about it. And it was my voice and speech class in college and in graduate school that ultimately led to me figuring out why I was holding so much tension in my body, where it was being held, what it was connected to, what traumas it was coming from, where I learned the habit. All of that stuff that I thought would take place in a doctor's office took place inside of a performance
Mm,
arts school. And so for me, it was really important to amplify the attention that we pay to arts
mhm,
programming because it is being more and more frequently cut. But I want to push through that and say, you know what, if they're not going to teach it in the schools, then we're going to teach it on the internet. And I'm going to, write a book about it and push it to people any way that I can. Because we deserve to know that there are more ways to heal ourselves, and we do not have to outsource our health to somebody else, that we can actually take responsibility for what we can do preventatively while we still have the power to do it.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for empowering us with this great book. CC
You're
Rice,
welcome.
this has been a genuinely different kind of conversation for us, and I
Good.
think exactly the one that we needed today. Thank you for being here. And uh, where can folks go to get this book, The Root of Awareness?
You can get it everywhere. It's all the places you shop for books. I like, in particular, though, bookshop.org, because they give back to small bookstores with every purchase that you make. You can get an audiobook everywhere that you get audiobooks. You can even listen to it on Spotify. It's all over. So thank you.
Well, we are gonna run to get it, and we're gonna have you back again real soon. When we come forward, we're closing out with California standing up to the federal government. You don't want to miss this. You're listening to and streaming a More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.